It's been a while since I've felt so passionately about a game that I felt a need to review it, but What Remains of Edith Finch deserves this gracious honor from me. I, the big Mr. Ant-Man, have been awoken from my eternal slumber to start posting videos again. What Remains of Edith Finch is a walking simulator, not to be confused with a strand-type game, even if that does sound amazing.
Alright, look, Morty, Kojima.
You play as Edith Finch, a 17-year-old girl who has decided to return to her childhood home and discover more about her family and herself. Edith is the last of the Finches. The rest of them have died in the past 100 or so years. Unlucky, and throughout the game, all their fates are revealed through flashbacks. I don't want to spoil the narrative. I think the game is a must-play no matter how good or trash you are at video games. It's super accessible. You spend the majority of the game walking, immersing, and hearing out the story. Most of said story is told through audio. Edith often speaks her thoughts, giving us her take on things or just some context we may need. Either she's speaking her thoughts or she's a schizophrenic. I went into the game with the preconception that the gameplay wouldn't be exciting. I'd heard great things about the game, of course, but mainly about the narrative itself, so it was a pleasant surprise when I got my first sample of gameplay, controlling a cat in first person. I'd just like to say this first bit of gameplay was majestic. It's oddly satisfying being able to bound from tree to tree so freely. I tried playing Stray a few months back. It's a game about a cat trying to survive in an apocalyptic cyberpunk land, and I didn't really enjoy the movement. Button prompts were displayed whenever you got close to an interactable ledge or object you could climb on top of. And not only that, but there was a sort of default animation every time you leapt from one place to the next, which I wasn't a fan of. Whilst the cat sequence in Edith Finch is very short, just a few minutes long, it felt so much better. Where I could jump was still limited, but there wasn't a button prompt, and I had slightly more control over how I landed. Okay, I'm discussing this one minuscule portion of the game way too much, but it's just to kind of explain how good the gameplay is without spoiling every gameplay sequence. The gameplay varies depending on the family member you learn about. They all have their own unique personalities and flashbacks, and the playstyle reflects that. On one level, you progress by taking pictures of a certain object with a camera. On another, you control a kite as Ragnarok unravels around you. In those 2 hours of the game, there wasn't a single moment I got bored. The way you played just kept changing. It kept it fresh, just like the human body in my freezer. I wanted to quickly mention the visuals. When I entered the family home for the first time, I was blown away by how good the game looks visually. It's like a really beautifully stylized version of real life. It's weird. On the topic of interiors, I loved what the devs did with them. Every family member has their own bedroom, and just observing the walls, the furniture, and the colors, they all tell so much about what that person was like. This guy was really into fake windows. Okay, so you've had your starter meal. We've got to talk about the main course now. It's Clorox again. The storytelling is masterful in What Remains of Edith Finch. Everything was well thought out, from the order in which you learn about the various family members' fates to the connection it provides you with each person, and then hitting your emotions in the face when you see the mental struggles they all had and how it drove them to their demises. The narrative is dark but beautiful at times. Sometimes it's even confusing. You have this really pretty scene set out in front of you, but the story, what the game is actually telling you, is anything but pretty. What I thought was really clever from the developers was how the gameplay messed with you psychologically. In many of the scenarios, the player is made to pull the trigger of sorts. What I mean by this is the gameplay puts you in control, and sometimes you're having so much fun you're not even realizing what you're doing to these people. Spoiler alert, there's a scene where you play as a baby and you control a toy frog, with the objective being to knock all the items from the side of the bath into the water. It's all fun and games until you knock the water on. Yes, the fetus drowned. Another thing I like story-wise is how it leaves just enough room for fan interpretation. I constantly questioned whether something was real or metaphorical, whether these people had mental health issues, or whether it was something mythical affecting their lives. This provides so much for fans of the game. Something like this can build up a community of fans who share theories and discuss among themselves for years. Even 3 years later, this game still has people discussing it on Reddit and Twitter. Those are the only two platforms I use. Once you finish the game, you have the ability to replay any certain level, which is great for trophy hunters and the theorists previously mentioned. I like when linear games do that sort of thing. Just the simple feature of replaying a level is so convenient. Like, what reason have you got not to add it? Developers, please take notes. And there we go, that's my thoughts on What Remains of Edith Finch. I'm back to consistent uploads, new year, new me. See ya.